I always like camping in theory. Get a little drunk, roast some marshmallows, maybe see who can piss the farthest into the woods. But tonight, I was mostly here to prove I could drink Paul under the table.
The four of us sat around a crackling fire, drinking our beers. Paul, my best friend since freshman year, was the kind of guy who could walk into a room and make friends before he'd even spoken. Tonight, he sat close to his girlfriend Lacey, one arm around her shoulders, wearing that lazy grin that made people trust him instantly. Lacey, all cheerleader energy and playful jabs, had her head on his shoulder, giggling at whatever he whispered in her ear.
Then there was Light. Quiet guy. The kind of quiet that isn't awkward, though. More like he's tuned into some background station the rest of us can't hear. There was something about him that made you feel calmer just by sitting nearby. Like he carried a stillness the rest of us couldn't fake no matter how hard we tried. I swirled my whiskey, watching the flames dance. You know what's wrong with school, I said. You can't actually say what you think without someone losing their mind. Paul smirked. You just like arguing for the sake of it. Debating, I corrected. It's how we keep our brains sharp. Lacey rolled her eyes. I think you just like being annoying. She nudged Paul with her elbow as if to say, see what I mean? Paul chuckled and shook his head, clearly used to playing referee between us. I grinned. That too. Keeps things interesting. Besides, if I didn't bug you, you'd miss me. Lacey smirked back. In your dreams, Jake. We passed the bottle around until it came back to me, lighter than I expected. I tipped it up, took a long drink, and set it down, leaning forward toward Light. So, Light, I said, you've been sitting there all zen and mysterious. What's your big philosophy on life? He shrugged. Don't overcomplicate things. Just enjoy what's in front of you. I grinned. Sounds nice, but that's not really a philosophy. That's just doing nothing and calling it wisdom. Come on, where's the meat? Paul laughed. Here we go. Light smiled faintly but didn't argue, which somehow made me want to push more. Still, I grabbed the bottle again, tipped another long drink, and slammed it down beside me. All right, talent show. Everyone's got to prove they've got a hidden skill. Lacey sat up instantly. Ooh, me first! She stood, stretched, and without hesitation launched into a perfect backflip, landing with her arms high like she just won gold. Paul clapped. Show off. You love it, she said, dropping back down beside him. Paul's turn was next. He set 3 beer bottles on a log a few feet away, flicked bottle caps like bullets, and sent each one spinning off into the dark. I raised an eyebrow. Quarterback precision. Then I stood and pointed at Lacey. Hit me with a number, anything over 100. 382. I turned to Light. Plus, minus, multiply, or divide. He sipped his beer. Multiply. Paul threw out 528. I took 2 seconds to think. 201,696. That, my friends, is why I'm the human calculator. They clapped, laughing. I turned to Light and handed him the bottle. All right, your turn. He didn't answer right away. He took a swig, then stared into the fire like it had something to tell him. And he was deciding whether to let the rest of us hear it. He leaned forward, eyes catching the light in a way that made me sit back without meaning to. 3 rules, he said. 1, do not question anything I say. 2, do not leave the firelight. 3,
If someone comes before I'm done, we don't stop until they leave. Lacey laughed nervously. What is this? Paul smirked. Sounds like some kind of drinking game.
But Light didn't smile. He just waited, letting the fire pop and crackle between us until we all muttered our agreement. The air felt heavier, like the woods were holding their breath. He closed his eyes, hands hovering over the flames. Slowly he inhaled, pulling his arms toward his chest, then exhaled and pushed them outward. "You're under my protection now," he said softly. I shifted in my seat. "I don't feel any different." Paul shot me a look. "Shut up, man." Light's voice dropped low. "Look into the fire, listen to me. Picture a staircase with 3 steps. We each take 1 step down." He paused. "Now there are 2. Step down again. Now 1. Step down." As he spoke, the firelight seemed to stretch, colors bending in ways that didn't make sense. My chest tightened. When I finally looked up, the night sky glowed a deep navy, the stars sharp and impossibly bright. The trees swayed, though there wasn't a breeze. Light's gaze flicked upward. A faint shimmer bloomed above the flames, growing until something slid out of the dark. A glowing, football-sized mass, drifting like it had been watching us the whole time. The thing hovered, pulsing with a slow heartbeat, its colors sliding over each other like oil across black glass. Lacey leaned forward, hand outstretched, her face glowing with childlike wonder. "Can I touch it?" Light gave the smallest nod. As her fingers neared, the thing drifted toward her, but when she tried to make contact, her hand slipped right through, leaving only a ripple in its glow. Paul let out a low whistle. "That's wild." I narrowed my eyes. All right. Very cool. But how are you doing this? Is there a projector hidden in the woods somewhere? Light flinched like I jabbed him. "No, it's real." That flinch was all I needed. I knew tells, and that was one. I stood pacing around the fire, scanning the tree line. "Come on, man. You expect me to believe this is real? There's always a trick. What's yours?" "Jake," Light warned, his voice tight. "Rule 1. I ignored him. "You've got something set up out there, don't you? Some little gadget to make it look all mystical." Each word seemed to hurt him more. His shoulders curling, his breath coming in sharp bursts. Then the last thing I said hit him like a knockout punch. He staggered back, tripped over a log, and hit the dirt. Paul and Lacey rushed to his side, shouting his name. I was about to say he'd be fine when movement caught my eye. 2 figures emerged from the shadows beyond the firelight. Tall, striking women with smiles too perfect to be real. They stepped into the glow like they owned it. "Hey there," one said, voice smooth as silk. "Mind if we join you?" The brunette smiled. "I'm Selena." The other, with hair like black silk, added, "Vera." Their voices carried that same strange smoothness, every word seeming to sink into my head. They moved with an ease that made it hard to look away. Paul nodded politely. Lacey offered a quick, "Hi." But I barely noticed. Light was still on the ground, ignored, as their attention drifted over each of us one by one. Selena's eyes locked onto mine. And for a moment, the fire, the forest, even my own thoughts seemed distant and unimportant. Selena took a step closer, her smile warm enough to melt the chill in the night air. "You look like you could use another drink," she said, her tone playful but almost persuasive. Yeah, I replied before I could think. I reached for the whiskey, handing it to her like it was the most natural thing in the world, She poured herself a drink without breaking eye contact, then patted the log beside her. Sit with me.
On the other side of the fire, Vera had settled between Paul and Lacey, her posture relaxed but her gaze sharp, darting between them like she was studying their every reaction. So, she said lightly, what brings you all out here?
Paul chuckled. Just a weekend away. Football's been brutal, needed a break. Lacey added, and Paul can't say no to a campfire and beer. Vera laughed softly. I can see why. You seem fun.
Selena leaned in closer to me, the faint scent of something sweet and unfamiliar drifting from her hair. You've got an interesting energy, she murmured, like you're always ready to challenge someone, but you're also looking for someone who can keep up. I smirked because she wasn't wrong. Guess you'll have to see if you can.
Her fingers brushed my side, light as a whisper, and her voice kept threading into my head like it belonged there. Each word seemed to make the crackle of the fire quieter, the world narrower. Across the flames, Vera was leaning closer to Paul and Lacey, her sentences flowing like music, drawing them into that same glassy-eyed calm. Selena's smile deepened, her gaze locking mine in place. Relax for me, she whispered, her tone velvet and dangerous. And the longer I stared, the heavier my limbs felt. At the same time, something cool and deliberate stroked my hair from behind.
I turned slightly confused, but both her hands were still on me. The realization hit a second before I spotted it. A tail, smooth and sinuous, curling in the firelight. The first glimpse of something far less human than they'd been pretending to be.
I noticed it. Felt like it should have been weird. But the thought barely stuck. My mind felt soft around the edges. Danger registering only as a faint curiosity instead of fear. Out of the corner of my eye, Paul had leaned back against the log, eyes half closed, while Vera and Lacey were locked in unblinking eye contact. Vera's lips curled in the faintest smile, her shoulders shifting just enough for me to catch the outline of something unnatural. Wings, faint but visible in the flicker of the flames. I should have said something. I should have moved. But instead I found myself sinking into Selena's gaze, the world narrowing to her eyes and her voice. A voice tore through the haze like a bucket of ice water. Stop! The fire roared upward, heat blasting across my face, and the creeping shadows at the edge of the clearing jerked back as if burned. My head snapped toward the source. Light was standing, one hand pressed to his temple, the other outstretched toward Selena and Vera. Only then did I realize how close the darkness had gotten, coiling inward around us like living smoke. Some of it seemed slow to retreat, lingering as though it didn't want to let go.
Selena and Vera turned toward light in unison. Their smiles stretched unnaturally wide, fangs glinting in the firelight. Horns curled up from their hair, wings unfurled with a leathery snap, and their tails lashed through the air.
They're ours now, Selena said, her voice stripped of all sweetness.
They are under my protection, Light replied, his tone steady but edged with strain. His glow intensified, washing over the clearing, and Vera took a step back from Lacey with a hiss.
Light looked at me and winced in pain, then stumbled. Selena and Vera's smiles widened unnaturally, revealing sharp fangs. Selena's eyes locked on me and she said, "This one isn't." In a blur, Vera rushed in and grabbed one of my arms while Selena seized the other. My feet barely skimmed the ground as they dragged me into the forest, away from the fire.
Behind us, Light's voice ripped through the trees, sharp and commanding. No! The sound made my ribs vibrate.
The forest swallowed us, the night alive with movement. Shadows bent and swayed around the trunks, dozens of glowing eyes blinking in the dark. My head felt clear, panic clawing in as the trance shattered.
A blinding arc of light streaked over my head. Selena and Vera shrieked, dropping me as they recoiled. Light barreled into Selena, driving her back several steps, but she twisted in his grip with inhuman strength, raking claws across his arm and forcing him to stumble. Vera lunged in from the side, forcing Light to pivot and block with a flash of blinding light that sent her staggering. He slashed low, catching Vera's wing with a sizzling cut that filled the air with the stench of something burning, and the severed limb hit the ground with a sickening thud.
The forest floor.
Breathless and shaking, I scrambled back, eyes locking on a strange clearing ahead, pale moonlight spilling over massive lotus flowers swaying as if to a hidden rhythm.
I stumbled toward the clearing, my legs moving on instinct, lungs burning. The air changed as I crossed into the moonlight. Cooler, thick with a sweet, almost intoxicating scent that made my head swim. Towering lotus flowers surrounded me, their petals shimmering faintly in the pale glow. One of them swayed, leaning toward me with deliberate slowness. Before I could move, it dropped over my head like a living trap. Darkness closed in instantly. Smooth, damp petals sealed around my face, and a cold, viscous ooze began sliding into my mouth and nose. I gagged and clawed at it, panic detonating in my chest, but the petals held tight. The taste was bitter, metallic, each breath harder to pull. My vision sparked white at the edges. Then, just as fast, the weight vanished. The petals were torn away, and I collapsed forward, gasping for air. Light was there, gripping my arm hard enough to hurt, his own breathing ragged and a fresh gash bleeding down his forearm. "Are you okay?" he demanded, eyes scanning me like he expected something worse.
I nodded weakly, still coughing. My legs felt like water.
"They'll regroup," he said, urgency sharpening his tone. "We have to get back to the fire now." He pulled me upright and took off through the trees, half dragging me behind him. In the dark, his entire body seemed to shimmer, casting a faint halo that pushed the restless shadows back. Figures flitted between the trunks, their eyes catching the light in quick predatory flashes.
We broke into the clearing. Lacey was crouched beside Paul, shaking him. "He won't wake up," she cried. Light dropped to one knee, placing a glowing hand on Paul's forehead. His jaw tightened. "We're going back."
He shut his eyes. The world lurched sideways, sliding several feet before snapping back. My stomach rolled, bile burning my throat. Lacey doubled over, vomiting into the dirt. When the dizziness faded, everything looked normal again. Just a campfire under a night sky. But Paul was still out cold.
We didn't waste time. Paul was dead weight between me and Light as we hauled him to the car. Lacey stumbling ahead with her phone in hand, shouting at some poor 911 operator to have a room ready. My own thoughts were a mess. Half stuck in what just happened, half trying to pretend it hadn't.
At the hospital, they rushed Paul away. Lacey paced until her legs shook, muttering over and over that he had to wake up. I sat in the corner, staring at my hands like I might see something on them. I wasn't sure if I wanted to. A doctor finally emerged hours later, his face unreadable. "He's stable," he said. "But he's in a coma. We don't know why." Lacey broke down. Paul's family was called. And Light, leaning against the wall with his arm bandaged, just kept watching me like he was waiting for something. Paul woke up a week later. No one could explain it. No brain damage, no lingering symptoms, just awake. Everyone was relieved. Everyone except me. Light started checking in on me after that. Sometimes he'd show up unannounced, leaning in my doorway, asking strange questions. Was I feeling more confident lately? Any new dreams? Any cravings? At first I laughed them off, but the more he asked, the more I realized something had changed. It wasn't bad. In fact, I felt better than ever. Sharper. Driven. Like there was something inside me whispering that I was chosen, and that I needed to go back to the forest. The thought didn't scare me. It thrilled me. As the weeks went on, everything seemed effortless. Studying, socializing, sports. It all came naturally, like I'd been upgraded somehow. Life was good. Better than good. But the way I started seeing other people, that was different. They didn't feel like friends or strangers or competition. They felt like cattle. And no matter how good life felt, I couldn't shake the pull to go back to the forest. One weekend, without telling anyone, I drove back to the same campsite. I lit a fire and waited for night to fall. I even tried Light's stupid chant, but nothing happened. So I just waited. The moon was bright that night, the kind of silver light that makes shadows look sharper. Somewhere out in the dark, I thought I heard whispering. At the edge of the firelight, I saw them, humanoid shadows swaying, beckoning me. I felt a connection to them deep and certain, so I followed. They moved into the forest slowly, like guides, until we reached a small clearing filled with lotus flowers. The shadow stopped and bowed. I stepped up to one of the flowers and touched it. The petals shifted, and from the bloom a shadowy head emerged, whispering, "Our Savior." I froze, startled, but something inside me told me to stand my ground. "What do you mean, Savior?" The head's voice was like wind through dead leaves. "You've been chosen by fate. When the lotus covered your head and your soul overcame the shadow, you too became one. Savior, please, save our people." I remembered the lotus, remembered the suffocating darkness. I asked the easiest question first. "Who are your people?" The shadow explained. "We are shadows, what you would call low-tier demons. In our world, we are weak, hunted by stronger races that devour us for sport. We are on the brink of extinction. Fate has given you the power to save us. The only way most shadows could survive in my world was to live inside a human. Bring them here," it pleaded. "Let us live in your kind, so we may escape extinction." I thought about it. About how I'd been feeling lately. Detached from other humans, drawn to this strange connection. The shadow's desperation felt familiar. And in that moment, my hesitation faded. "I'll help you," I said quietly. "I'll save your people." The shadow's grin widened in the dark, eyes burning with desperate triumph. "Then we will bind you to us, for our survival depends on you. Together we will rise or we will vanish forever, and you will not let us die."